your satanic plans will fail. This is in one of the sentences in the statement by His Eminence Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib. It's a very clear sentence. It is a satanic plan, yes, which has been drafted in Washington, who agreed to implement some European countries or elements. Who is implementing it? Al-Doha, who is the person involved. Why the plan failed? There is a contract for selling Egypt signed by Washington with the new Tartars selling the country. Part is taken from Sinai in order to solve the problem of Palestine. Part of taken from the southern Egypt in order to divide the Sudan into 3 states. And part is taken from our western desert due to the plan to divide Libya into 3 states. Why I'm saying this? Because the image is quite clear. Why Obama is so emotional, and why this kind of tension in Istanbul and with Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He's not happy because some Arab countries are helping Egypt. Some of the statements made by him is an inquiry why the Arab countries, the Gulf countries are supporting Egypt. It's a conspiracy because it has been revealed by Tamarrud and state of people's will, the will which was supported by the military or the armed forces. The difference between the 25th of January and the 30th of June, in the 25th of January, the military council ruled for 15 months. But in the 30th of January, the military council ruled for 9 minutes when he delivered the statement. And after that, the affairs of Egypt was handed over to the interim president and the transitional government. So people's will supported by the armed forces. It was required that the people's the army and the Ministry of the Interior should be destroyed altogether during the 3 years for the rule of Morsi. In order to understand the situation, we will see how the events proceed. They wanted to go to the Security Council, and they really would like to present the meal to the international community for a sit-in. It's not a sit-in, it is 2 terrorist foci which continued for 43 days. Obama in the United States of America, Obama received a number of messages from our youth. Do you remember the dispersing of Texas sit-in 1993? Something happened in the United States for 50 days. What did you do? He was not the president at that time, but the American regime, the country of freedom and human rights. They killed 82 persons, including 2 pregnant women. He killed them altogether and called them terrorist foci in the country of human rights. where they are in control of Guantanamo. They are biased to the contract of selling Egypt, East and West and South, which has been signed by them. Let us go to the Muslim Brotherhood in dealing with the mosques when people sit in the mosques. The jihadi fundamentalist came to Sinai, and they are sabotaging in Sinai. In 17th of August 2009, in Gaza, there was Sheikh Abdul Latif Musa and the helpers of Abi Abdullah, the immigrant. They established a camp, a Salafi camp, which is different from the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas found that this is a threat to them. They refused to go out. What did Hamas do? It destroyed the mosque altogether. It destroyed the mosque altogether and killed the people inside the mosque and dispersed the people of the helpers and closing down the religious schools that teach fundamentalism. They thought that Egypt can be reduced to something like Gaza. They were trying to do this in order for Egypt to be small. These are the information. These are information about events that have taken place in America and in Gaza. Search on Google and see what happened in Texas, and would get the information about it. You need to talk about it while sitting on coffee shops. Also you can get information about the Gaza mosque, which was destroyed altogether. This should have been implemented yesterday or today. Egypt is the capital of cinema. If you want to produce a movie, you need to know the tools. You need not to fabricate and go through a movie house that is not up to the level. There is a movie about sabotage, the invasion of Azbakiya police station. It ends quickly by coming into Al-Fath Mosque together with a crew of Al-Qaeda Al-Adid and some other channels in Gaza. Of course, the funding is well known. They signed the contract and America paid the money. So it is being repeated. In Washington, the reality will be shown. They went into the mosque and provoked all the time in order to pressure the Egyptian police or the military to go into or to force into the mosque. Among the process, one was put in the coffin and his leg was moving. Ilham presented this photograph. The security force did not do anything, so they came inside the fire extinguisher and opened the fire extinguisher in order to show that this is a tear gas bomb. They started to invade the mosque, and our brothers who have the right to see this, they would lose their nerves and would repeat. You have seen this on the channels, and Egypt would not be defeated by all means. This is the scene. Yeah, you see the smoke coming out of the fire extinguisher. Yusuf Al-Husseini and Khalid Tilema on TV, of which we take this scene, they explained it several times because they were presenting throughout the night. Wa'il al-Abrashi was also there up to 6:30 a.m. I'm telling this on the occasion of something very important. People are asking me whether Egypt will be like Syria. I say impossible. I say impossible because Syria, before the events took place, there was no media channels. The Syrian channel always said what the regime wanted to say. We have media, we have state-owned media and private media, strong or weak. It is not the matter, but we have opposition as well. We have Al-Baradei, who used to talk before the 25th of January. I remember I mentioned Al-Baradei because Al-Baradei has been one of the tools of the game. Egypt would not be like Syria because Egypt did not has not been exposed to destruction of a township with all the people inhabiting it, like Hama during the time of Hafiz al-Assad senior, or the father of Bashar. We have the internet, we have the telephone system, so the size of corruption is greater. In as much as we are concerned, our ambitions are greater as well. The size of the corruption in Syria goes beyond any limits. Ambitions of Syria were not that great. The ambitions of the regime, they didn't want to be a strong country or a big country because Syria had some alliances that are supporting it so far with Iran and with Russia, and they are still supporting it all the time. They will not leave it at all, and that had done harm to the process in Syria. Egypt does not have that kind of alliances. Even the alliance between Washington and the falling regime and the other regime which followed afterwards, it was an alliance of interests. Hosni Mubarak was for the Americans an opportunity, but Morsi was a strategic treasure. Now this has been well understood in the United Arab Emirates, and they have taken a decisive attitude vis-à-vis the Muslim Brotherhood from the very moment of their arrival to power. I would like to talk to Mr. Habib, the chairman of the Emirates Writers. Good evening, Mr. Habib. I'm talking about the menace or the danger of the new Tartars. Since some time I have been following what you are saying. The attitude of the United Arab Emirates has been very decisive vis-à-vis the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt as soon as they arrived on the top of power. We when we discovered that there is an organization for Muslim Brotherhood in the United Arab Emirates, there were some trials during what we called the dark year of President Morsi's rule.
Right now, the United Arab Emirates was not able to have strong relationship with kidnapped Egypt, if the expression is proper. But the strong Egypt that came back based on popular desire, in a few days, Egypt is regaining its strength and weight in the region and the world. Emirates is normally on the side, Egypt, the history, and the Arab hope. We're proud of what's taking place in Egypt. The situation of the United Arab Emirates, and with the founding fathers, Sheikh Zayed, and it is well known that when somebody talks about, some people say the respectable Arab Emirates, not the United Arab Emirates. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has a very strange situation. He said he's upset with Emirati Saudi support and the financial aid of Egypt. Why is that? What is your response to that? I don't think this is not something we grant, but we had a lot of editorials in newspapers talking about the fact that this is the normal role of Emirates to support Egypt, and the role that Egypt played in supporting Emirates is unforgettable. We remember in a lot of incidents what Safwat Hijazi said, and Assam Narayan said also about on that the Emirates, the people of Emirates did not learn from the Egyptians. No, we learned a lot from the Egyptians. They raised us on good morals and values and tolerance and accepting the other and patience and a lot of things. What happens now of a natural relationship, this is the normal situation. I'm so happy by your intervention, Mr. Habib. Mr. Habib said that the Egyptians taught us, and we need to remember that Emirates and the Saudi Arabia and all the Arab countries, even Algeria, Morocco, Libya, and all the Arab countries that supported Egypt through crises and tough times after the 67 and after the war of 73, and even this moment, the Arab consolidation is manifested. I showed some addresses, and I would like to say, to talk with our guests, especially that they're experts in their own portfolios and files. I have, after the break, an expert on dealing with political terrorism, Muslim Brotherhood, and some Mr. Abdurrahim Ali, the editor-in-chief for Al-Bawaba News, and I'm looking forward to a rich discussion. Before getting into discussion with Mr. Abdurrahim, I would like to refer to the campaign of endorsement and support of Major General Abdel Fattah Sisi that is adopted by Al-Mehwar channel. We have over 100,000 signatures in hours, and I hope millions in the coming days. Because Major General Abdel Fattah Sisi is elected as a symbol by the Egyptians. And the word Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is now the bullet that we can shoot against terrorism and the new Tartar. I would like to welcome you, Mr. Abdurrahim, here from Al Baba News and the Arab Center for Research. I always see you the tone of optimism, maybe because you have the information, but people, when they watch with their eyes, they see things as major, the events as major. You have the evaluation of what is going to happen, so you're usually optimist. I'm trying to interpret. What is the picture today? It's perfect. The picture is perfect. Today, there are no movements, as we expected yesterday and last night. I was with you in an intervention, yes, and we expected that's it. The countdown has started for the big fall of the Brotherhood. And they're trying to reach the highest peak of being barbarian and using the cheapest and the dirtiest means and the legitimate and the illegitimate, everything, using everything. And they did not leave anything they can do and did not do yesterday and last night. But there is some sort of concentration in Arish. This is a separate story. Sinai is a separate issue. And what the nation is undergoing is an important battle, and it's still ongoing. And the Americans, up to this moment, they don't know how to finish in Afghanistan. So the silly man and the irrational man, Mohammed Morsi al-Ayat, turned Sinai into a terrorism spot. We have a big experience in dealing with people like Tora Bora. And the Egyptian security was able to produce 28 books saying that we're going to give up our ideology, and now they're back. But there is a strong idiom, that a strong saying, if you're back, we're back, and we have more. This is an Egyptian saying, and that's why they're in Upper Egypt, and we know what's coming, and what's coming is true and correct. What is coming is correct. What is coming? Standing, the firm stand, the legal stand against terrorism. These people have blood on their hands. They insulted Egypt, and they will not be left alone. There's no joking and compromise in this. Let me just finish so you want separate Sinai from. Let's forget about the small Tora Bora and how the Egyptian security will deal with. They will deal with it in major professionalism. They dealt in that several times before. If you remember, Taba and Sharm el-Sheikh and Dahab, 3 strong explosions when the Tawheed and Jihad movement was there, and some of them went to Gaza under the leadership of Mumtaz Dermish, and others went back and became the regular Salafists and went to the mosque traditionally, and whatever Islam and law allows, like wearing a short galabiya and letting your beard and anything you see correct and suitable to you, you can practice that out. Any limit, going outside the limitation, carrying weapons was forbidden. The tip of terrorism took 6 months and it ended. Major General Ahmad Ra'fat cleared it totally. Then came the revolution of the 25th of January. 168 people in the first Friday taken out from the jails, the least one with execution 25 years, and the Sharm el-Sheikh cases, and they met with outlaws and with the jihadi Salafis, and that was expelled by Hamas. it was expelled and sent. They reconciliated and sent them back. So they have push and pull, and it's like they dealt even with Mumtaz Dermish, who's more ferocious than Abdul Latif. Mumtaz Dermish was sponsored by Iran and still is sponsored by Iran. And there is an agreement between Hamas and Iran that the main sponsor is Iran, and he's not to be touched because he does the dirty work for them. If they have a problem with British, he assassinates Alan Johnson, the BBC journalist. If they problem with Israel, he's the one who got Gilad Shalit for them. But if things didn't work out for them, it's not us, it's Mumtaz Dermish, it's not us. Because at that point in time, they were an emirate and they had a government and back there and everything. So Sinai is another problem and a separate story, and it's an ongoing operation. It's paused a little bit because of what's taking place in Cairo, but in the beginning you're talking about 50 murders of the most ferocious terrorists. So this is a message. If you're going to carry your weapon, I'm going to carry your weapon. If you're going to beat, I'm going to beat. If you're going to go one step ahead, I'm going to go two steps ahead. So these days they're trying to work in this area. They're trying to get you engaged, and they don't get it that they're dealing with a central brain, although they have adopted this philosophy, but they don't get the fact that they're dealing with a central brain. What was needed, if you look at the big picture, what was needed? What were the purposes of the Muslim Brotherhood? First, number one, the biggest number of chaos in police stations by entering more than 100 police stations and killing the biggest number of police officers. Second, attacking and entering the biggest number of jails and freeing the prisoners. Three, burning government buildings and important buildings. Four, random firing at the people in the streets. Then suddenly the international organization comes out, who had agreed with Erdogan and the fat cow of Qatar, and they bring something that is called the President of Egypt, and their Shura Council, their forged Shura Council that has the big list from Rabat, and this idiot Prime Minister, what's his name? I don't remember his name. You mentioned it a while ago. To have a meeting and select somebody to work instead of Morsi, and Turkey and Qatar accept him as official. That was needed. That was requested. That had been requested yesterday. And so you start dealing with a president and a government, a transitional government. So people start to get confused. They met today in Turkey, but what happened is they were not able to enter any police stations. Zero jail and prison was entered. The burning of the Arab contractors building, because maybe people don't know that something strange happened after the crisis in 48, after they assassinated Nokrashi Basha, and the crisis with Nasr after trying to assassinate him in 54, and dealing with the British trying to hand them over a piece of land. They remained in prisons. The person who took them out was Ahmad Othman, to burn out his company. So this is one of the ironies. So the only one who saved them from this major crisis, the man who established the company that they built last night. What happened? It's a burning or a fire in a company. None of the goals set by the Muslim Brotherhood and the jihadists and the Islamic group was achieved. But let's stop at Al-Fath for a little bit. Let me finish because it was big. Yet I will come to that point. But on the other side, you wasted a massacre to say that the Egyptian security and army is attacking a mosque. It's not 1,000 minaret. I think it's 2,000 now. The country of the Azhar, and they're killing the prayers or the sit-ins. You took 30 hours and you used your international negotiation skills. You brought Toba back with your negotiation skills. Used all your patience that you developed as a police officer and an army, a military officer. All the wisdom of a 7,000 years nation. Why is that? Because you're not. You're not working by individual brains. You're working by a centralized brain. I'm reading you, and I know what you're going to do next. And I greet all the intelligence and information agencies in Egypt. They're playing an amazing game. The national security, the intelligence, and general intelligence, and the military intelligence. And this is for the first time. The cooperation, before that, everybody worked individually, and now the information is everywhere. Massive coordination, and you worked with all your resources all over the world. It's an amazing game that is going to be taught one day. In addition to what Mr. Abdurrahim Ali said, you saw today Dr. Mustafa Hagazi in the presidency, an international press conference, although some questions that were assigned by the Muslim Brotherhood representatives that were sitting there and trying to play a certain role to cripple that. But we saw the Minister of Foreign Affairs moving today, amazing movement. Egypt is playing an amazing game today. It needs to be taught in the history of this country how it stopped. The crawl of the new Tartars to Egypt, as the same way Ahmos stopped the Hyksos, and as Qutuz stopped the Tartars and Saladin stopped the Crusades, and the Egyptians today, the biggest crawl against this country, it would have been destroyed. The 7,000 years would have been destroyed. And with science, with information, with just strategic plans, with tactics on the ground and above that. These soldiers are not out just by coincidence, and people were not out in governments. Some governments fell, and some governments had more pressure than others. Some governments had certain circumstances, like Minya, the Islamic group is there, the most ferocious name, and a history of blood with that group is there, and great enmity with the Christians, and the biggest number of Christians and churches and monasteries, and so it's a special case, so we can't measure on that. There is an incident before that was done by the some police assistants, that they brought the security director from his office to the train, and that was a big mistake from the Minister of Interior. I don't know how if he evaluated it, to return the same security director. But the idea of returning him, the prestige and the greatness, you can make him the security director in Cairo, but you cannot have the same person. They brought him from the office, and they had him walk in the street, and they sent him to the train station. So the prestige was not. So in Minya, you had to bring a very strong man with a good name to give some image and hold things in control. Why am I talking about this? Because they have to take Minya outside the equation for a little bit. Still, police stations were not entered. They're working on they're like women. They're cheap people, cowards. You're not a man. not the Egyptian women, right? No. It's work without chivalry, you know. If you have an armed police officer, why are you going to the church? Why do you are going for a man who is worshiping? You're going to a peaceful person. But they're saying that the Christians are the ones who built the churches. Yes. The first person who started killing Christians in Egypt is the Egyptian Islamist group. The first person who legitimized the money of the Christians, legitimized the takeover of the money of the Christians. This is Omar Abdurrahman's fatwa. He's the Secretary General of the Islamic group. The first armed operation against Christians was on the 16th of August, 1981, before the assassination of Sadat, 2 months before the assassination, on 7 shops of the Christians in Naga Hamadi, killed 7, and they took all the gold and they bought weapons and they executed the assassination of Sadat. And they're teaching us now and telling us who's doing what and who's did Bahgura and Abu Qurqas and who destroyed all the churches in the 90s and who said that I'm going to target these 3 Christians, tourists, police officers until you return the mosques and leave the Ministry of Endowment to me. And these are documents. This is history. And unfortunately, Al Jazeera knows these facts, and they have a documentary and more than one documentary over that. And they invited me several times and they showed me armed violence against me, and you find some people in front of you saying that these are very bad people, but now they have a purpose, and it's destruction of Egypt and implementing the American plan. They used the fire extinguisher last night and saying this is the tear gas, but Egypt was professional, information, patience, hard work, science, planning, and specific results. First, no police station was burned. Number 2, and if you think of a lot of names were arrested, and they're going to be declared later. We're not going to mention names. The biggest name of jihadist Salafis in Egypt, Al-Zawahiri, Muhammad Al-Zawahiri, and this is like the Bin Laden to United States. Mustafa Hamza was arrested. Khalid Mustafa, who executed the Hosseini scene and the French tourists, and he went to Gaza and came, and Hamas stopped at the borders and nobody would able to talk. They wanted to have, in the 28th of January 2011, they wanted to execute something, and today they said we have nothing to do with that. Yes, but they don't know what they're playing. You don't know. It's the complete game, and you will see what the Turks will see, and the Americans will see something. As for the Turks, Erdogan today said in some announcements to the Anadolu that he's against the violation of sacred buildings and entities, Islamic be it, or Christians, so some kind of a step back. The pharaohs will teach the world how to protect the law and how to get your right back. I appreciate everything you're saying, but still the international organization met in Turkey and they demand the pressure. Forget about all this nonsense. Second, the Muslim Brotherhood is still required to do some big massacre that allows some more intervention. Yes, and they still want Morsi to be back, still, and still dreams and still kicks around. And there's a question that I need to cast here. Last night there was an explosion that is that is manifested in the speech of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. one of the gains also, we said that there is no random deaths in the streets, no police stations were burnt, and they were beaten in October and in Alexandria. And the big bomb by the custodian of the two holy shrines, I was with Mr. Mustafa Bakri and Khalid Abu Bakr, and we were in Ganadria, and a big group, and Amir Met'ab, the son of Abdullah ibn Abdulaziz, welcomed us. So instead of canceling the Ganadria, he waited there to accept the condolences. And we were talking about the situation and everything, and what do you think? And he said, every time I enter my father's room, I find him kneeling down for half an hour, crying. So I get worried and concerned, and I asked him, what is it? Why is it that long, the sajda? He said, I'm crying over Egypt, and I'm praying for Egypt. So Prince Met'ab said, to that extent, he told them, if this region, if Egypt falls, the region will fall. The Arabs survive because Egypt survives. The same thing rang in my ears from everybody I met in the United Arab Emirates. You know that I go to Emirates all the time, and I have a lot of friends there. They say Egypt is the big sister, and if it went down, we will go down. And I heard the same thing in Bahrain. The day an Iranian official said that Bahrain is the 14th governorate, President Mubarak, at 8 in the morning, 8 a.m., was in Bahrain, announcing in Manama for the whole world his endorsement that any attack over an Arab country is an attack over Egypt. So this is the military belief that believes that the Gulf area is an indivisible part of the national security of Egypt. That's why it was in enmity with Iran, and still is in enmity with the state of Iran, because the military belief does not allow that any country threatens the security of the Gulf. That reflects in the threatening of Al-Ayat. Wanted to change that and bring Nagad and go to Azhar and come out with a victory, the sign of victory, and 22 violations of the national security. And he says we'll open a new page. Yesterday, the director of the intelligence, last night, that's Ramses, the director of the intelligence, give him 2 cases of spying of Iran. He puts it in the drawer and does not sign on them. So the game was perfect last night, crowned by the situation of Saudi Arabia. And it reminds me of their situation in 1973, and with Sheikh Zayed's situation. And he said that the Arab oil is not more expensive than the Arab blood. What is unity? Is unity to go to Syria and bring this and say this and that, and I'm the leader? This is not the unity. The unity needs to be voluntary. It needs to be in action, not words and ideologies. And the moment of facing a strong enemy called Israel, all these countries were with me. When I'm facing the terrorism, all these great countries, great in their spirit, great in their leaders, they were with you right away. From the beginning of the work, Major General Sisi declared the roadmap: 5 billion from here, 5 billion from there, $10 billion. At the time, Muslim Brotherhood were dying over their idiot, Mursal Ayat. He is an idiot. what people don't know is that for the first time, so we took 11 billion from Qatar, and they're all debts with big interest exceeding, and the period of time is 2 years, like 5 years. They have 1.8 of interest, and what I want to say is, voluntary unity is people gathering around each other. That will, the size of Saudi Arabia for the Americans is huge. To mention Saudi Arabia, we have a big writer, Mr. Abdullah Al-Harthi, the Deputy Editor-in-Chief. Welcome, Mr. Abdullah. We were talking about the message of the King of Saudi Arabia in supporting Egypt and rejecting the pressures over that. The King of Saudi Arabia, Abdullah ibn Abdulaziz, assures in all the Islamic and Arab issues the fixed position towards brothers and sisters in Egypt. The custodian of the two holy shrines is clear. It's not just for parties and groups in Egypt, it's for everybody, especially that the kingdom wanted to express by this message that the issue of Egypt is an internal issue, and intervention in Egypt was not allowed by any means. Egypt is a sophisticated country, and what's happening is war against terrorism. It's not against certain groups and prosecuting certain groups in Egypt. What all the people is witnessing, what's happening in Egypt, is is a sacred effort. So the message was, Mr. Abdullah, the message was very clear, and the language was very clear, and the language very firm and strict with the strength, but I think it confused a lot of international calculations and confused the calculations of the conspiracy against Egypt. So I think the reaction is even resonating amongst the Egyptian people. They want everything to remain the same. What's happening in Sinai the kingdom is against terrorism, and it dedicated millions of riyals to support the efforts of fighting terrorism. We can hear you. I don't know if the voice is clear or not, but Mr. Abdullah Al-Harthi, I think for technical reasons the call is disconnected. I wanted to ask him why. I'll ask you why Washington don't want to see that what's happening in Egypt is terrorism. I think Mr. Abdullah is back, and I have Mr. Abdurrahim Ali and Mr. Abdullah. I'm asking a question: why Washington does not want to see what's happening in Egypt as terrorism? Can you repeat the question, please? Why doesn't Washington and its allies and the allies of Muslim Brotherhood don't want to see this as terrorism? Before the military intervention in Egypt, every effort was exerted to keep the unity of the Egyptians. It addressed all the Egyptians, not a certain party, not a certain group, that they're facing terrorism. Some countries do not consider that terrorism, and those are the ones. There are certain calculations. And this does not represent a major country that, like the United States, to have a situation and believe that this is not terrorism. This is the pure definition of terrorism, burning and sitting in the mosques and using religion. This is not Islam, this is terrorism under the name of religion. What we saw of the flags of Al-Qaeda is the biggest evidence and sign. And they want what happened in Iraq and Syria and Yemen to happen in Egypt. Mr. Abdullah Al-Harthi, Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Awqaz newspaper, Saudi Arabia. It's a clear message. This is terrorism. Yes, the definition of terrorism is using violence by a certain group to achieve a political gain. What is happening right now? Are they using violence for fun? They're enjoying it? Is it individual, not a group? Is it a person who went crazy and decided to kill people? Or is it organized, methodological violence practiced by a certain group with certain goals that they want to force their political will? Isn't that your own definition as Americans? When 36 people died in Port Said and reached 47 and curfew was set on Port Said, I'm not bothered. I'm not interested. The issue, I'm not interested with the addressing the Egyptian, the American people. I'm interested in addressing the Egyptian people and authorities. We need to work harder in that. We can influence the public opinion in America for two reasons. The first one, the Muslim Brotherhood and their situation from the Qaeda organization. And when we ask Mahdi Akif, what do you think of Osama bin Laden? And he said, he's a true warrior and soldier and jihadist. He's a sheikh. What do you think of Al-Qaeda? Is a jihadi movement that is fighting against the Crusaders. Who established this organization? Abdullah Azzam, a member of the International Organization of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the CIA has all this information. It's not my information. The CIA is the one, in their documents, said that Abdullah Azzam was sent by Kamal Sananiri to establish the Jihadist Service Office to receive the youth from all around the Islamic world and train them, and then they have a base to name this. That's why it's called Al-Qaeda, the Arabic word for base. You provide information for people. Some people watching you and say, as long as America knows all these things, why do they get into alliance with them? The purpose is they have a purpose, they have an interest. In 2001, there was a big question in Washington after the explosions. Why do they hate us? Some professors went to the think tank, and it's all linked to the international Zionism. They said because you're standing against these extremists from reaching power, and these dirty places will not suit civil powers. These people will start states of their own. If they want to have Islamic Emirate, they have it in the north, and they have Christians are sad, we'll give them a piece of land. So what's the solution? we will see who is the big organization in every part and deal with that and work with that. What are the biggest organization? Yes. And absorb all these Islamist groups and sects. And in this, if they want a country here, they do it. If they don't like it, if the Christians are very upset, we will give them another state. And they solve the headache of the Middle East, which is Israel, and the big story of 56, and we get the Naqba desert, and we join it with Gaza, and we have Palestinian a home for the Palestinians, and we leave the land, the Holy Land, for the Israelis, and we get rid of the headache of the Middle East. What would we do when we divide it into 3 states or countries? So the army will be divided in 3 years, so there is no big power that can stand against Israel in the future, so we guarantee peace by force. And 2 and 3 and 4, they're not going to come to me and beat me, and they have nothing to do with me. That's why they're obsessed now. They're going crazy. The game is over. This huge project that they worked on starting from 2002 until today, and they have memos and reports and studies and research and major achievements, and the Muslim Brotherhood were worried. The American ambassador went to the grocer and they talked for 3 hours with this guy called Shatter. The Muslim Brotherhood were concerned, they were afraid. If you read the case of the 25th of January and the black carbon, it has nothing to do with Morsi. It's just, we don't want to confuse people. Morsi met with the CIA in Egypt, and this was recorded by the security forces. And there are investigations, but there is no publishing. And these are facts, information. And he sent 3 to Turkey: Ahmed Abdelati, Saad al-Katatni, and Salah Abdel Masoud. They met official number 1 in the CIA in Turkey, and they reported to Morsi as responsible for the political office in Egypt, with the outcome of the meetings, 2 tapes, each one an hour and a half. The surprise was in the meeting. The Brotherhood said to the Americans, "This is not our way. We don't want it this time. Let's make it 2 cycles after the revolution. Somebody comes and another person we support, and then we come in the 3rd cycle." And the Americans said, "If you didn't come this time, we will not be able to endorse you, not in 50 coming years." So they pushed them very hard. That's why when somebody asked me from the media friends before the Muslim Brotherhood, they say the Muslim Brotherhood are going to address 435. I said 100%. They said they're not going to provide a candidate, a presidential candidate. I said they will, based on information. But when they have a candidate, they will. That's a political suicide. But because they're not ready for running a big country like Egypt. So do you want this huge project not to kill the Americans, not to kill for that and endorse it with a lot of money? I want to be convinced. Let me play the simple citizen here. The Americans know that they are not ready for running a country with... No, the Brotherhood know that they're not ready for running a country as big as Egypt. But the Americans don't know that? No. And Khair al-Shatter wrote that. So the Americans hoped. He said it's not a big deal. That's why Anne said we're surprised with the performance. We're shocked with the performance, yes. The Muslim Brotherhood made a mistake. You know, the running wheel, if you stay away from it, it will keep on running. This is Egypt is a centralized country for like 7,000 years. If you took a distance between political forces and played a director or a president, everything would have run smoothly, but you decided to interfere and put a stick in the wheel and wanted to control it this side to that side and this side, and you broke it in the end because you don't know how. So the Americans wanted him to stay back a little bit, but because he is stupid and because he never dreamed of this, and he found himself in the front, so he decided to improve and enhance, and he made it blind. So the Americans, since the first minute, wanted the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood. That's why when Major General Sami Anan was in the United States of America on the 25th, the demonstrations and a big chief in the military, one of the biggest chiefs in the military, is in America. Why? And on dinner, they asked the American general, "What are you going to do with the demonstrations?" That's on the 23rd, before the demonstrations. So the guy was surprised. What we will do? We have nothing to do with that. Armed forces, what do I do to do with demonstrations, protests? It's just protests. I'm a chief of forces, of the armed forces. I'm here to work in, but I have information. I have information that people on the internet have protests, information that the Muslim Brotherhood is. These were information with the security forces, and when Habib al-Adli kept on centering his head until to the 27th, he started to think. He kept on thinking, but it was too late. And they couldn't even send the report to the general prosecutor. Before the referendum, the constitutional referendum, the American ambassador in a meeting, and she said in a meeting, this morning presentation, that the result was of the referendum is 64% before the referendum. A big intelligence agency for a very big country wrote a report that the intelligence in Egypt caught before the candidacy opened in Egypt and before the Brotherhood released or announced that they have a candidate. That a report for the president, and a very clear statement saying Mohammed Morsi Al-Ayat is the next president of the Arab Republic of Egypt, a major intelligence agency. And the officer who had this piece of paper, who caught this piece of paper, he said they either are crazy, people are like who are too big, to be joking, or stupid. He kept the piece of paper or the document until they released that they're going to enter with a candidate, and then Kharaj Shatter was out, and then Mohammed Morsi, he brought the document out. That's why in the result, the American ambassador sat with Shafiq to negotiate, and the first question she asked, why didn't you release the results? The elections was today, and the next day she asked to meet with him. He said there are results and there is a schedule. You're talking about Major General Shafiq, yes. He said there is a schedule and procedures, and it ends on Thursday, and the declaration on Sunday. So you're looking forward to falsifying the elections, but this is an ambassador, this is official. I'm telling you, so you want to falsify the elections then. So Major General mentioned that in several times. So she came after that, why don't you leave them something? Leave them what? Leave them, she said, the parliament and the constitution. He said, I don't own. So she's negotiating, she's trying to run a deal, and she doesn't know if they're going to falsify, and so all that work starting from day one, December, until Morsi was declared a president, the Americans are fiercely and ferociously there until Morsi Alayat. So what I'm understanding here is that the Americans did not know that there will be a revolution on Mubarak on the 25th of January. So some say that. So were they surprised by the 30th of June and then the 3rd of July and then the 26th of July? Well, I'll tell you the conversation that took place between Khairaj Shatter and the American ambassador. The numbers, this is the quote of what she says. Quote, "The numbers will be big. We hope that you deal with the policy." She called it the idea of absorption. No, the ignoring what's taking place. And do not get angry and do not respond. Do not be surprised and do not respond to any demands. That was sent to Morsi by Khairaj Shatter, so he ignored. The Americans told me to ignore it. Do not kill anybody. Do not beat anybody. Do not send your people, as if there's nothing there, and it will fade out. This is the only thing that didn't calculate Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's situation. Because he's an intelligence. He told Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to attend the meeting, and he sang songs and wrote poems for the armed forces. And he said amazing words, and the police, and not just trying to drug them, but these people. And it will be written in history. This story will be mentioned in history one day. The idea of the belief of the national state about the treason of this man and his group, believing that he's sending us to this country and trying to wait and say maybe he will wake up, maybe he will do better later on, and keeping a line that we cannot exceed for Egyptian nationalism until everything is built. And the decision was no, it's not going to happen. We're not going to take it. So we will see what the people want, and we will see what the people demand, and we will choose what the people selects. So they met on the line of patriotism and nationalism that will not be lost. So the surprise came out. In a scene yesterday, one of the biggest achievements of the Muslim Brotherhood to return the prestige of the police and show themselves as the ones who knelt down and make the unity between the media and the church and the judiciary and the army and the police and the people. And that was in front of Al-Fath Mosque. The police is dealing with professionalism and daring, and the people are there and nobody's crippling, and there was as if there is an invisible hand, although it's a big moment and dangerous and a lot of firing, and there is harmony, as if that's why there were two scenes, an acting scene, bad acting scene, and a true scene on the ground. They created the biggest national unit that happened in the history of Egypt. We thought that the national unity is between the Christian and the Muslim, and a sheikh or an imam and a priest, but it turned out to be the political powers and the people and the police and the military. And I would like to greet the National Salvation, because I talked a lot about them. I was angry of some situations. Their situation yesterday is a very honorable situation. From the terrorism of the Muslim Brotherhood, the situation of Hamdin Sabahi is also a very national and patriotic situation. And it's time also to say that Major General Shafiq's situation was more than marvelous. The whole national forces and Dr. Abul Ghar and Ahmed Saeed, there was something strange that happened in Egypt. The Azhar and the churches, people, men, women. We're going to hear from a citizen from Cairo, Mr. Muhammad Abdul Ghani. Disconnected. We kept him for long. The past couple of days, you asked the people, see them in Zawi al-Hamra and Shubra. They stopped them and they stood against them very firmly. I saw this scene. I was in Alexandria the day of the evacuation of the sit-in, and I came in the morning when the evacuation took place. Let me take the call. Muhammad Mahallawi from Cairo, Mr. Muhammad. First, I'm happy to talk to you and your honored guest. I would like to ask your guest about the situation of Dr. Baradei, his resignation after the attack or the evacuation of the sit-in of Rabah and Nahda. He resigned. What can you say about that? Okay, question for you. I talked. I'm one of the first people who said that, and people were upset, and they talked to me and sent me a phone call. The day the Supreme Council of National Security met, by the end of the meeting, I was told that Dr. Muhammad Baradei said, quote, I will resign in case you try to evacuate the sit-in forcefully. And they asked him for solutions, and he didn't provide any. So they kept discussing with him until they provided the plan. So he resigned after that. He has his own construction. We're not going to say treason, but some people have their own constitution and their own construction. So we have another phone call, Mr. Nabil from Cairo. My greetings for you, Mr. Nasr, and the patriotic guest, Mr. Abdurrahim Ali. Greetings for him. But I have a plea. Not every terrorist action in the street, I do not to take them to the place they want and leave them, and when the problem occurs and innocent people die, we start in our reaction be noble to repeat the situation. So you think the security treatment is too ideal, and the idealism is not going to be useful. Thank you, Mr. Nabil, very much. Mr. Abdurrahman from Cairo. Mr. Abdurrahman from Cairo. Is he here? Yes, I'm here. Peace be upon you. And I would like to greet you and your guest. I would like to assure the Egyptian people that Egypt will remain in safety. I'm a history and geography teacher. Egypt has seen this before, and if you read history, you will know that we were able to stand against any invader. And we taught the world, and at a time when the world was under invasion, we were independent. We're the first people to learn about peace. The spirit is great. I'm happy that people have this spirit now. Thank you a lot, Mr. Abdurrahman. I would like to go to Dr. Sarah in Bahira. Peace be upon you. I would like to greet you and greet your guest, Mr. Abdurrahim Ali. And I have a question. About Al-Fatih Mosque and what happened today. How did Saad Amara and This person on the TV, I saw him on Nahar going out and entered the car of the central security, and he escaped. Who told you that he escaped? Some people from the police, they were with Mr. Wali Brashi now, and they said that they were not able to capture him. Let me tell you something. The piece of information is not confirmed that he escaped or not. That's number one. Number two, more important than capturing Saad Amara, that we don't go to the purpose is bloodshed or massacre and a mosque to be forcefully entered. So that was the issue. Let me go to Mr. Fouli from Cairo. Peace be upon you. Greetings for you and your guest. Egypt is strong and in safety and security, and I would like to assure the Egyptian people that they're strong, and they had a lot of difficult situations, and they passed that, and they will pass through this as well. Outside the context you're talking about, I would like to suggest something that I hope you adopt. As for the additional articles in the new constitution, I would like to add an article to say a referendum on the president after 2 years of his performance. So he's elected, and then after 2 years, you have a referendum against it. So we don't need to repeat that. A good idea. Thank you, Mr. Fodi. People are concerned. They don't want to be checked again. Mr. Ali from Cairo. Dr. Ali Ismail, Professor Dr. Ali Ismail. Welcome and greetings for you and your guest. Can you put the volume of the television down, please? Yeah. I wanted to talk to Mr. Abdurrahim Ali. There's an important piece of information when he talked about what the custodian of the two holy shrines, King Abdullah ibn al-Aziz, the history of Saudi Arabia needs more understanding than what he presented in order for our people to understand the greatness of nations and people. Our young people, they need to know that King Abdullah is a great king and the son of a great king, a brother of great kings. When their father was about to die, he gathered his sons, and they're a lot, and they're big men, strong and brave men, and he said to them, your eyes are in Egypt. And I recorded that in my writings, and I taught that in Saudi Arabia. I would like to thank you, but I don't want you to hang up, and I want to talk to you about this more, and I want you to leave your phone number to the control. Thank you, Professor Ali Ismail. Dr. Muhammad Ali from Sohag. Peace be upon you. Greetings for Mr. Abdurrahim, and I would like to demand, we need a book about the Muslim Brotherhood. He has a lot of books, yes. I want a book about the latest things, what they have and what they did.
Yeah, hold on and leave your telephone number with the control. Mr. Abdurrahim Ali will provide you with books, not only one book. Dr. Muhammad Ali from Cairo, Dr. Muhammad Abdullah from Cairo. I'd like to express my gratitude to Mr. Abdurrahim Ali and want to say that all the revolutions were based on internal injustice and to combat corruption and to render a project against the nation null and void. It is a glorified revolution, unique revolution, and for the first time the Egyptian people is united in this way and becomes one hand against terrorism and against injustices to which they are exposed. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad Abdullah, and Mr. Abdul Rahim was reiterating the same idea. I have Mr. Samuel. Thank you very much. And I am an admirer of Dr. Abdul Rahim Ali. I read a number of booklets. What if the Brotherhood rule? I was terrified if they rule, and they actually ruled, and I lived the nightmare. Yeah, that's why they said that Abdul Rahim Ali is an enemy to them. I have Abdul Basit from Cairo. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Mr. Nasr, how are you? And my greetings to Mr. Abdul Rahim Ali. So, good morning to you, and Egypt will go forward forever. I am indeed happy that the situation is over, and may Allah bless Egypt. And I'd like also to thank Mr. Abdel Fattah, Major General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Mr. Fathi from Minya Governorate. I have a request to you. Yeah, Minya has no one police station functioning, so we are appealing to the Minister of the Interior to re-instruct the operation of Minya police station. We second your opinion, and I think the military or the armed forces might play a role in this regard. Alexandria, Mr. Saeed. Mr. Saeed from Alexandria, good evening. And good evening to Dr. Abdul Rahim Ali. I'd like to give my opinion about the present government. I think the present government is sparing no effort, and the statement made by the Prime Minister gave an impression to people in the street that there is a capable government. So I salute the government, the interim government, and I really feel sorry for the resignation by Dr. Al-Baradei, because this can be taken as an insult to Egypt. We believed that the new interim government means that we are all united. So the resignation is a treason to the state, is a betrayal to the state. We have Dr. Azza from Cairo. Welcome, Mrs. Azza. I'd like to express my gratitude to Dr. Boutros Ghali, who gave his opinion about the revolution, and also thanks are due. Yeah, the former Secretary General of the United Nations. He sent a message to Ban Ki-moon telling him that the 30th of July is a fully fledged revolution, popular revolution, and I believe that we need to reduce government spending, and also to combine similar ministries in one ministry. Engineer Salah from Cairo. Thank you very much for the program with Dr. Abdul Rahim, who is a professor in the field of studies and research in the Islamic movements and brotherhood. We need. I support your opinion, and I call upon the coming chairman of the board of Al-Ahram, the coming chairman after the present Ikhwan or Brotherhood representative. So in order to have a photography department that establish a museum, Al-Walid bin Talal said that there is no Ikhwani or representative of the Brotherhood among us. So I hope that the next chairman of the board of Al-Ahram would organize an exhibition about the crimes of the Muslim Brotherhood. Muhammad from Alexandria. Assalamu alaikum. The Egyptian people who built the pyramids, and now the world comes to see the revolution of the Egyptian people, and the revolution that would not be repeated. We make miracles, and no one will make miracles other than Egyptians. Tawfiq from Alexandria. Salam. Peace be upon you. How are you, Mr. Nasr? And your guest, Dr. Abdul Rahim Ali. May God support us, and may God help Islam and Muslims. And Major General Sisi is my favorite. There is no one better than him. No one is better than Abdel Fattah Sisi, because he has secured victory for us, and may God help us in order to get out of this predicament or hard situation. Dr. Abdurrahim Ali shared with me the happiness because he feels the appreciation of the audience of what he has been saying. We have the picture, Giza, since some time, and also you have seen Ramses Square, Rab'a Adawiyya Square, and Al-Nahda Square. So the situation is quite promising. But when the morning comes, the new Tartars would come out. But when they go to sleep, the life will become much better. We want life to be good while they are with us. I come back to Mr. Abdul Rahim Ali about the referendum of the public opinion. They are telling me that there is a great request for telephone calls, but we will come back to him. Your comment about the telephone calls. People say there is a great desire among the people. We're talking together on the TV. Some would get some conclusions from what we say. Some others would say this is an exaggeration, but the reality is that this group, the Muslim Brotherhood, has practiced terrorism. We have unprecedented support from the Arab nation. In any other time, when should we declare that the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist group? This is the right time. This is the time we declare them a terrorist group. We have seen them attacking mosques and using the mosques as a place for sit-in. The political leadership should declare it as a terrorist organization or a terrorist group. It has no legal license, so it has become a terrorist group. In all what we have been living and what we will live in the future, because the matter will not end so quickly. It would take some time to settle. We need to issue a decree indicate 4 articles, definition of terrorism and declaring the group as a terrorist group. We have unprecedented popular support, unprecedented Arab support, and we go to the Arab League in order to request the League to issue a resolution stating that it is a terrorist organization or a terrorist group. That would do a lot of things. Number one, the person who talked about leaving them to organize a demonstration from Al-Fatah, and you leave them to go out with that demonstration. But if you declare them as a terrorist group, the first moment they declare that they are that they will take to streets, you will have every right to stop them before they start. So if you consider them a political group, they will be given the right to demonstrate. We need to declare them a terrorist organization or a terrorist group. We have an initiative on Al-Bawaba News. The Arab Center for Research, it's a kind of a questionnaire like Tamarrud, like Rebel. I, the undersigned, call upon the government of Egypt to declare the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. There will be electronic voting, so we will log in Al-Bawaba News and sign in declaring this organization a terrorist organization. Businessmen are required to print this kind of questionnaire or affidavit declaring it as a terrorist organization. Egyptians should say that we do not need this organization, this group. We would like to list it on the list of terrorist organization. The government should promulgate the anti-terrorism law. If you declare it today as a terrorist organization, the EU on Monday will not be in a position to declare the Muslim Brotherhood or to oppose some decisions that you have taken internally. Now we will talk about political parties based on religion. The Constitution should tell us what to do with those political parties established on on religious beliefs. Or otherwise we will go back to square one and we'll go back to confusing the culture. It will come again as armed organization, and we will go into this vicious circle. Do you have anything that you would like to add? I know you always had a lot to add. You have been very informative to us. The dialogue with you is always based on a great deal of information. Thank you very much, Mr. Abdelrahim Ali. Dr. Abdelrahim Ali, I thank him for the information he provided us with. And after the break, our coverage will continue, which started at 9 a.m. morning and is to continue with Engineer Basil Adel, First Assistant to the Minister of Sports, and